Hi, welcome everybody to our first forum session here as part of the Bootlebox AI Accelerator for higher education. I'm pleased to be joined by Mike Rodriguez from Campbell University and Thomas Conway from Algonquin University. Welcome, gentlemen. This is meant to be an interactive session. So while they are the folks I've asked to come join, everyone's meant to be actually a participant. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody and allow them to join the conversation. So maybe we'll just start with some introductions. Mike and Thomas, would you mind introducing yourselves?
No problem. I'll start off first. Hi, Mike Rodriguez. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm an associate professor at Campbell University. I'm teaching marketing, sales, and analytics.
Great. And Thomas? Let's see here. Looks like I'm going to make you a co-host and see if that works. Because I certainly did not mean to stop your video here, Thomas. Try this again. Thomas, can you hear us? Okay, well, we'll give Thomas a moment to work out probably a technical issue from our end. So the subject today is use of AI in the classroom, the challenges and experience. Mike, we've had a number of great conversations about your use of AI. Would you like to talk about what you've done this past year? Some of the things that you tried, some of the challenges you've had, and maybe some of the ways you overcame it.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So thank you, France, for hosting this and allowing us to be part of it. So a couple things that I've done is, again, I focus on sales and also on the marketing side. So from a sales perspective, well, one, in all my classes, I kind of break down and ask the question. One is, I started with how long has AI been around, right? And most of them will say 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, right? And the answer is actually more than 50 years, right? It was the accessibility to AI that has just been gained in the last, half a decade or decade. From the general public. And so I really want my students to understand the differences between traditional AI, generative AI. And then the next question I always ask is, who here uses ChatGPT in education? You always get a kind of hem and haws of it, hesitant. I said, no, I encourage it. So then I ask them how they're utilizing it. And most of it's just kind of input, output, and they're gone. So what I've been doing in my classes is really breaking down the differences between what traditional AI is and what foundational generative AI is, but also talk about how to really leverage tools such as ChatGPT and other LLMs in doing their coursework, right? Not just putting inputs and expecting an output, but really focusing on the concept of prompt engineering. And so we've done that in role plays, understanding use cases, personas, buying situations. Also, from a marketing perspective, in the principles of marketing and strategic marketing, which is a capstone class, really kind of understand how to create content, how to brainstorm, how to work with teams. And again, again, I think it's just, again, there's this in between of, should we be embracing it or should we defend against it? And I really think that it's one of those things we have to embrace it. And that's what I'm hoping that, this conversation kind of starts that evolution there.
Yeah, so let's talk about challenges. So it sounds like there's actually two sets of challenges. There's one on the student side, and there's another set of challenges on the faculty side. So do you want to talk about each of those in turn?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So on the student side, obviously it's one of those things where they don't understand where there's bias, there's hallucinations, and it's inaccuracy. And so one of the first things, and this is kind of a test, right? I wanted to see if it would work. And I said, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to give you an exam, right? And they all freak out, right? Because, well, we didn't study for it. I said, hey, the good news is I'm going to allow you to use ChatGPT to do it. And they're like, fantastic. So, and I said, it's not a trick, right? You can use it. The only thing is instead of having an hour, you have 10 minutes, right? So you're working efficiently, right? But are you effective? So efficiency is you're able to take the test in a short amount of time. Let's measure the effectiveness. And so when they take the test, right? And actually, when I did this experiment, the average grade was a 76. Right? So they were kind of shocked by that. So I said, here's the thing. I said, you can accept your C, right? Because that's what, because again, it's 76% accurate, right? Which is okay, which is passing. Or you can put in the extra work to really understand what the answers are. Now, some students are like, is it okay if I just accept my C? And and there's one or two of those that that are okay with that. But the other people, and I said, listen, this is not a real test, right? If you're those who want to accept your 76, now I know where you're coming from, right? You're not the most ambitious student. But for those that, this is a do-over. You'll have a do-over, but this time I want you to study for it. I want you to do it. So I think the concern is they have 100%, confidence that what they're putting in the internet is going to be 100% accurate coming out. So that's a kind of a test of one of the challenges that we have. The other challenge that we have is you have faculty pushing back. I had and I think we had this when we had our conversation a few days ago or yesterday, I believe, is I had a faculty member say, Mike, I heard you're encouraging ChatGPT in your class. And I said, yeah, absolutely. I said, we've got to embrace technology. And he's like, and there's like, he goes, I'm really concerned with the way you're positioning that. And I said, well, okay. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, you used to collect cell phones beginning of class 3 years ago, didn't you? You were that professor. He goes, yeah, of course. I'm like, do you still do it? She said, no, of course not. I'm like, why? She said, well, times have changed. I said, well, this is no different, right? We told, I remember this, I've never done it, right? But some professors would have a basket, right, in front and be like, hey, everyone put their cell phones in there, right? Those days are gone. And so what we're encouraging, so now we've kind of accepted the fact that our students are on their mobile devices. We accepted the fact that, Google's not a bad thing, right? People are going to continue to Google. And now we have to, ChatGPT, LLMs, Bootlebox, whatever the LLM is, we have to embrace it, right? And so the faster we do it, right, the better, the more chances we have to correct the bad behaviors.
That's great, Mike. I think there's a theme that's emerging about expectations versus reality of AI. What do we think AI can and will do, and what does it actually do? And I find this often a lot in my work with organizations and individuals across industries, not just higher education. I think there's just a fundamental lack of understanding about the potential of these systems, but also their limitations. So, Thomas, this is a subject you and I have already had many discussions about. I would love for you to introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about your work with AI in the classroom and for classwork.
Right. Thanks, Franz. My name is Thomas Conway. I'm a program coordinator of regulatory affairs in Algonquin College in Ottawa. The reason I got so immersed in AI over the last couple of years in particular was because it became such a central part of regulatory affairs, period. And then I got drawn off into the college's strategic task force on AI integration, and was basically leading some of the research there and got further and further in. But at the same time that was going on, I was trying to educate my graduate students in regulatory affairs about AI, which presented a number of counterintuitive results initially, actually. Like when I first introduced AI into the classroom, there were a lot of students that were afraid of it. I mean, they were afraid of its implications. They were afraid of being caught using it. They were afraid of a number of different things. They didn't understand it. And so I spent a lot of time basically walking them through the ethical approaches to using AI in graduate work and in research, and spent a lot of time teaching them about critical thinking with AI. So I developed a guidance document, and I took them through the guidance document using various tricks on showing them how, depending upon how you prompt, AI can be reliable or not reliable. And then I also took them through a bunch of exercises on creative use of AI to generate research proposals, to critique research papers, and things like that. And what came out of that is that they began to see it more as a tool, rather than this mythical thing that is a threat to my academic integrity, right? And we went through the same thing. We go through the same thing with professors. I mean, one of the things that I discovered with introducing AI program-wide is that, rather than just in your course, is that you have to be very concerned about consistency between how professors are treating these things. because students will go into one class, the ones that are adept at using AI do AI and will have inflated grades. And those that are fearful of using AI will have depressed grades. And so the first time we did it, we could see this deviation. Well, why is this student like the top of the class in this course, and in this course they're not? And so we started to look at sort of, so I had to set up basically standardized policies across the whole program. And that meant guidance documents. So I had to develop guidance documents on critical thinking, on creative thinking, on principles, on the doubt first principle, and a number of other things like that to institute it. And that will be the big challenge, right, for higher education institutions. It will be that standardization. It will be making sure that it gets integrated as a coherent policy, and then students know what that is and they feel comfortable using it. That's the thing. And but I must admit, I was surprised. A lot of the results initially were counterintuitive. I thought the students would arrive, oh, great, I can use Chat GPT to do A, B, C, or D. But then, you look at it, and they actually, had a lot of apprehension in their voices, a lot of apprehension in their faces on using it. What was legit, what wasn't legit, am I going to get caught? All of these kinds of things. And so you have to spend a lot of time just building a ethical mind frame around the use of AI with students. And the same thing has to be done with professors. And that's the barrier to overcome. Huh? That's the big one. Because if you don't integrate AI comprehensively through a set of principles and a set of rules, you're going to be in trouble. Yeah.
Let's scratch on that a little bit, Thomas. So I like what you said. Obviously, this is part of the philosophy we espouse at Boodle and the adoption of AI, that it's not just about providing technology and here you go, right? Like any other tool, right? Like in the movie Spider-Man, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So we've got to teach faculty and students, frankly, how to use this technology responsibly. How have you tried to do so in your classes?
Well, I mean, I've developed certain principles that the students follow. And so I spend time talking to them about those principles, and we spend time practicing, right? So we have the first principle I came up with was the doubt first principle. And because when I got into the literature, I discovered that all the ethical considerations we have, it's kind of confusing. There wasn't a singular principle that you could easily communicate to students. And so I came up with this concept of the doubt first principle, which basically trains students to do factual verification, ethical consideration, and contextual consideration. And it takes them through how to do that. And so we practice that in the course. The second thing, they don't know how to reference, right? I mean, they don't know how to reference AI, because AI is not a static source. It's not a book. It's not a publication. It's not a journal. It's and it's much more interactive and a creative process. And so they didn't understand how to treat it in their work. So I came up with what we call the AI use transparency forms. A simple version for when a student's just doing a basic assignment or a basic paper, and a more complex one for students that are doing more advanced work in for example, if they're using AI to look at contraindications between pharmaceutical drugs or whatever complex. I'm not going to bore everybody on that stuff, but you know what I mean, more complex things. And then once those rules were set, now the students are just like, yeah, I mean, this is great. I mean, I'd learned so much more than I would have been able to learn if I was just doing the old blowing dust off the books in the library, right? I mean, they just, and you notice it, huh? Like I do a lot of, grade comparison and grading experiments with AI. And you just notice the quality of the work takes a huge leap in terms of the student knowledge. And you don't just look at that in terms of their text, but when you talk to them in the hallway and in class, they're just like more knowledgeable, much more quickly. about the subject matter. And that's what convinced me that we would fully ingrain AI to achieve educational objectives that we weren't able to achieve before, particularly in very complex subject matters. Like try to teach, what are the main features of the Food and Drugs Act? You know what I mean? But with AI, you can break it into little simple chunks, and people can really understand it way better by scaffolding with AI, and all of these techniques that we've now developed and we are now kind of using quite a lot, actually. And I give the guidance to the students, and I'm saying, go practice, go practice. And they take the guidance documents and they go practice, and then they come back to class next week and they're like, wow, man, I really discovered this, or I really discovered that, or I never knew that, or it's just simply because when you're dealing with semester programs, semester's not that long, right? And some of our subject matters are quite complicated. And I'm seeing way more breakthroughs, what I call breakthroughs with students than I used to see, in terms of just the light bulb going on, right? And that's what convinced me that I'm going to be full in on AI. And went through the task force with the college, convinced the task force to put in some very strong recommendations on AI. Now we're starting our 5-year strategic plan. I've been put on that working group, which is just a small working group that will be responsible for the 5-year strategic plan. And to the college's credit, I'm primarily there because of AI, because of my knowledge of AI. And so there's a lot of experience that I've accumulated that convinces me that any institution that wants to stay competitive, any program that wants to stay competitive, is going to have to get fully on board with AI. I have absolutely zero doubt about that in my mind. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for sharing, Thomas. I'd like to open it up to the folks that are joining us, the attendees today. If any of you would like to come online and share your personal experience trying to bring AI to the classroom and to classwork, and what challenges you had and what experiences you had. So feel free to raise a hand. It looks like Eduardo came off mute first. So Eduardo?
Yes, thank you, Francis. Wonderful to have the two guests here with us in the forum. My name is Eduardo Ballareso. I teach for the Watson Institute. I teach Mapping the System, which is Systems Dynamics. It's a course that now, it used to be a semester-long course. It's now, we do it by blocks. I don't know if you have adopted that in your institutions, but it's 4 weeks instead of a whole semester. We still have the 14 or 16 modules that we teach. For Mapping the System, which is Systems Dynamics, is a very intense course to do it in a block. And semester was far more easier because it's brain gymnastics to break from linear thinking to circular thinking. And I really think that adopting AI, especially during the segment where they need to research and connect the dots, would really benefit this course. So I'm definitely interested in following out that conversation with both of you to see how I can take it to the next level. As far as students, I've already done, but only scratched the surface in telling them this course allows you to use AI. The only thing I want you to do is to quote the prompt, the initial prompt. Explain to me what the prompt is and how you got to the results. But I am nowhere to where Thomas, is indicating, where he has already developed principles and guidance stockings and all that. So looking forward to hearing more about that.
Eduardo, you're welcome. I freely develop these and I post them on LinkedIn, and I'll share them through Boodle AI. And so the Doubt First principle is on my LinkedIn page. There's a paper in there on that. There's also a paper in there on the AI use reporting forms, transparency reporting forms on my LinkedIn page as well. So if you want to go there, you're free to download those and see if you can make some use out of those. We've gone through quite a bit of development work on this and other guidance. In terms of your research of your students, we also have a guidance document on using AI for science, applied science research. I think that's also posted there, and it gives you different ways of using AI with group work. If you're dealing with in blocks, you might want to do more group work. And there's ways of doing that. And so there's a number of resources out there now in the applied sciences to really help with how to use AI. Yeah, it's some good stuff out there.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
No problem. My pleasure, Eduardo.
Great. Would anybody else like to come off mute and share their experience in the classroom?
Hey,
Kevin.
hello, this is Kevin. I'm at Marquette University, assistant professor of practice there. Thanks for putting this on. I'm really excited to learn more about Bootlebox and how we can integrate that into our course delivery. You know, for me, this is more of a comment on what I'm hoping to find how Bootlebox will be able to address these challenges. I mean, some of the biggest challenges is overseeing the students' engagement with AI. Obviously, we can have them self-report, but if we can actually have some transparency to what they're actually doing rather than them reporting on it, I think that would be huge. And it sounds like there's some opportunity there with Bootlebox. And then just monitoring their engagement with the tool across different projects. So, you know, I don't know, today's probably not the forum for that. I think it looks like on the agenda in future meetings we'll be addressing that, but I just kind of wanted to kind of share that as some big things as a faculty member, is being able to kind of have you know, have a view into the engagement and interaction with the tools and also with them, with their other teammates. Because as we all know with group projects, sometimes it's hard to assess who's doing the work. So if we could have some view into that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, Kevin, I will reach out to you after this. I think you're going to be very, very pleased with what we're building. Those 2 points are actually two of the exact pain points that we're trying to address based on feedback from folks like yourself. So that's great to hear. Kevin, if you don't mind, I would love to hear, this past year, did you or your colleagues at Marquette, was there any introduction of generative AI into the classroom and for classwork, and how'd that go?
Yeah, so I'm actually new to Marquette this year. So I was at a prior institution, and I know we all tried different ways to incorporate AI, but it was kind of like just trying to figure things out. You know, I think a lot of faculty at the faculty level were trying to figure out policies as the institutions were kind of defining that. So we have different variations of, you know, what's appropriate, from restricting it outright to incorporating it. We saw it across the board. I tended to take Mike's approach to embracing it and trying to set up guardrails and responsible use. And that's where it's like, well, what is responsible? So it's great to hear some of the comments on how others are achieving that based on the panel members there. So that's kind of where we're at.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Ron Dufresne, who's on, is a dear friend. We were cadets together at West Point almost 30 years in the past. Ron, I know you are thinking about the ways to integrate AI, but certainly we'd love to hear any thoughts you have on maybe aspirationally what you're hoping to do.
I sure am, France. And I told France when we first spoke about this about a week ago, after, you know, using this avenue as a way to reconnect some 30 years later, I'm an absolute the newbie of all novices. And, you know, so far something that's really struck me is, and I resonate with this, is the power of our role as faculty in setting expectations. Something that Mike had said, you know, I think he was talking about me for a second, you know, collecting the cell phones. I did that, and I put an end to that because of COVID and, you know, concerns over, you know, fear about, you know, swapping germs or whatever. And then I came to realize soon thereafter that I didn't have to collect the cell phones. I had to just set expectations. And my cell phone, my students don't use cell phones. My students, you know, unless I pedagogically highlight, here's an instance for us to, you know, jump online, they're not on their laptops. They're, you know, listening to each other, because that's the expectation that I set. And something I've heard both panelists here sharing is the power of setting expectations. And I think that we have a lot of power as faculty in just, explaining why, right? So I explain, I don't want you to on your cell phones as an instance, to support your learning, support your classmates' learning, to show respect to each other. And the students abide. And it's nothing's magical about my approach. It's just being an adult with adults. So that's something that really resonates with me is how both of you have, used that power to, then within that frame, use that to explore the tool of AI. So that's something that's I'm already taking away from the last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, Mike or Thomas, do you have a response to that?
Go ahead, Mike, if you'd like to.
No, I think I think just touching on the points is that I think we all have a responsibility, but I think the not the concern, but I think the challenge is that we're educating on both ends, right? We're educating on three ends, right? Ourselves, the faculty, and also the students. I did a little bit of a seminar in our department meeting. And it was like, I don't know, 15, 20 slides. And my dean had said, hey, we got to water this down a little bit. I don't think they're going to understand. I think it's going over their heads. And I said, I think you're going to be surprised that they understand it more than they have. And he's like, yeah, no one's embracing ChatGPT and all that. I think you're the only one. And actually was 80% of the faculty were doing it, right? And so and dean was like kind of shocked. And so I came up with a prompt engineering exercise. It's very simple. It's basically, it's a formula, right? Here's the formula. Like if you're asking it, don't ask one question, have a formula, right? It's a little bit of heavy lifting they have to do, but after that, all you have to do is change one of the factors. So it's kind of like it's a recipe. I call it prompt engineer recipe for sales. And so until I come up with a better term, and it's just like really 5 factors, and they just basically change it based on the situation, right? Are they attempting to send an email? Are they doing a discovery? Are they trying to negotiate? Are they trying to understand a persona? And out of all the slides, that was the slide that everyone started taking a picture of. That's a new thing too. I never everyone's taking pictures of things now. So the faculty started taking this is the slide that we needed. We needed like a structure of how to create a prompt. So just understanding what, and I call it prompt engineering. It sounds really fancy. It really isn't. It's just basically a disciplined approach of how to create it. So I think even starting from, just developing a simple prompt, I found that exercise very useful, not only for the students, but for the faculty. And actually faculty emailed me and say, hey, I created my own little prompt here. Do you mind reviewing it? And it's actually kind of a cool thing to see that once you and that's kind of where I call my guardrails, right? It's a one step ahead of kind of putting some guardrails. And I do some consulting on this. And I think a lot of companies are saying, we want to embrace it, but now that we have all these silos embracing it, it's more of, okay, how do we put guardrails to it? And I think this little kind of formation, and the great thing is that now the faculty say, we're going to present this as an assignment, right? They have to basically give us all their factors, right, for their prompt, and I'm going to grade them not only just on the output, but what were the inputs to get that prompt back. So I think that's really interesting is that we're very concerned about what the output is on ChatGPT and all the LLMs, when we should be measuring what are they putting into the system, right? Because that's what they're controlling. And so that's what I've kind of built into my classes is that, okay, as a team, as you create your outputs, right, we know it's generated by AI, right? But what are you telling it to do? And that's how I'm grading. I'm grading their creative thinking. I'm basically doing that prompt. And so I'm not focused on what the output is, right? I'm focused on what they're telling it to do. So I think that's one step that we can all take with our students.
Yeah, I think that's really good, Mike. It's similar to what I've been doing. When I first get a new cohort comes in, one of the things, and I'm teaching them about a little bit about AI and research. What I get them to do is not submit at all to their large language model until they have completely prompted where they see their entire thesis go. Okay, so doing very, very simple, and I'll give you the reason why I do this, but giving very simple prompts where syntax doesn't matter. It's just a very clear statement. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And that's where they think that their thesis is going to go. And then I get them to submit it. And the lesson from that is that they lead the research, not the AI. And that's the what I'm trying to teach them when I do that. And then we look at the various phases of the output, and then I say, look, it's okay if you change course on your research because something that the AI taught you. But then when you're going to go off onto a different branch of this tree, reconstruct it again and submit. So I teach them to always be the driving force behind the research and don't fall into a problem where a lot of people exist, which is allowing the AI to do the thinking for them. And that's a really, I think you'll find that that's for anybody, that's a really useful exercise, because one of the things we have to teach them is critical thinking and leadership over the AI. Those are two very, very critical issues. And if we teach them that, then we can avoid a lot of problems. The other thing we do is we don't adopt a punitive approach to academic integrity when it comes to AI. We adopt a compliance, promotion, and transparency approach. And that's based on a lot of research. I've run tests that how I can use AI to produce text for me that just simply can't be uncovered by AI detection tools. If you know how to prompt properly, you can do that. So what do you do in appeals processes, right? I mean, it's very, very difficult. So we've adopted very much a compliance promotion approach, transparency approach. How did you do this, rather than measuring the final product? And that I think is something else that a lot of institutions are going to have to develop their policies around and come to grips with. The other thing we got rid of pretty quickly was don't use AI at all. Impossible. It's just simply not going to happen. It's in regulation, we call that is an unenforceable regulation. You just simply won't be able to do it. So take some different routes. I mean, it takes time to get faculty to get out of the old ways on this. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and because you have some real old school mindsets, and that can take a chunk of time to do that. Yeah, that's it, Franz. Thanks.
Great. I'd like to just open up for comments, questions folks have of each other. Any thoughts folks want to share? Kind of an open-ended Q&A, but it's directed at everyone. So that includes the panelists asking questions of the attendees. So feel free to raise your hand or just come off mute.
Look, there's a wide range of issues. I mean, we can explore. One of the things that I'm finding interesting, which is my motivation of graciously accepting France's sort of invitation to participate, was I like to see how other institutions are organizing themselves with AI. That's because we went through quite an elaborate process, and this has been going on for like 2 years, and we just submitted our AI integration recommendations to senior management just over about a month ago. And now we're moving into a 5-year strategic planning process. And so one of the things that I'm going to be doing is spending some time and just kind of looking around, seeing what other institutions are doing and whether they're incorporating AI tech people from outside to help them strategically plan integration because of AI in their institutions. Because it's complicated. It's extremely complicated. To integrate it across an entire institution that has 30,000 students or 40,000 students. It's very complicated, and it's going to be interesting to see some real good success stories over the next little while, including ones that hopefully Boodle AI gets involved with, right? So that's something that really interests me a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question related to your statement there. You kind of question, or you're going to be looking out to see how others kind of incorporate some AI tech providers. I'm just curious where you're going with that. Obviously, you're on this call today, and there's probably some intention to integrate this tool into what you're doing? Can you maybe share with where you see a tool like Bootlebox fitting into your overall plan for how you organize around AI?
Yeah, we're at that stage where the college is basically starting off with a full system integration of Copilot at the moment, right? But standard LLMs are going to be a problem because of inconsistency in outputs of LLMs, standard LLMs, with respect to grading and other efficiency issues around an institution. So the bottom line is that colleges and universities will end up needing specialized tools that they may ride on. They'll ride on LLMs, but they will need specialized tools for everything from grading systems for consistency to enrollment to orientation, chatbots for orientation questions. All those things will emerge in the coming years. And a lot of people adopt the assumption that we're going to be able to just superimpose existing LLMs onto these diverse requirements, and that's just simply not going to be reality. So Bootlebox, to me, the way they're doing stacking bots and all of that, the thing that I liked about it immediately is that this is an approach that's very much along the lines of what I'm thinking and we need to do. Let's take, for example, like if you want to apply AI for efficiency gains and cost savings in college administration, like building use, room use, and all that kind of stuff, that's quite a different tool from when you're doing grading of graduate research papers or theses, or when you're doing something else, and those will all require specialized tool training. They won't just be LLMs. And my background is research, and you can do basic research with existing LLMs, but the minute that you start to do specialized research, let's say on the impact of regulation on pharmaceutical design processes or something like that. I mean, like I said, I don't want to go down that road too much, but that's a specialized tool. You're not going to just be able to apply an LLM to that. You're going to have to be able to develop tools which can be blends of existing LLMs with some programming as a cap to that, and so on. But the first step you'll get over if you dive into this more heavily, Kevin, is that this is really complicated. There's going to be a lot of AI uses at the university and college level, from facility management to grading to enrollment to job search for your students to all these kinds of things, and they're all going to require specialized treatment. There's not going to be LLMs that are going to be able. LLMs are going to be your base, but there will need to be bots, tools built out on top of that.
Great.
There's no way around that. Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can interject here, I love the macro aspect of it, and certainly I understand how complex that be. If I can take it more to the micro and to the classroom, if I can address this to Mike, because since I'm starting, what would you recommend, Mike, on the prompt engineering? What would be the first 3 steps I can adopt in order to enhance my delivery or enhance my class, my curriculum with AI knowledge and AI sort of practices? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So, a couple things is, one, there's a ton of stuff I'm more than happy to share, that I actually created. I don't know if you're familiar with Salesforce Trailhead. It's a free resource, right? And so they've got some really great 5-10 minute modules that talk about prompt engineering. So I kind of introduced that, kind of encourages you, they get points and badges and stuff like that. So I encourage them to kind of go through, and then I kind of do a very quick like quiz on what do you understand of prompt engineering. Then the second thing is I give a scenario. So for me, it's a very simple scenario. The one is, the one that I do in prompt engineering is like, invite a recruiter to come to your university, right? Invite them, try to get them a LinkedIn message, right? And they use ChatGPT. And so and every message starts up with the same thing. I hope this email finds you well, right? And it basically writes the message for you. And said, okay, then I basically give it more directions. It's okay, so let's say we're talking to someone, right? What was the last person you talked to, or a recruiter or a manager? And like, okay, it was actually a human resource manager who worked in pharmaceutical. Okay, now give it a direct persona. Give the stakeholder some human element into it, so some character behind it, and then they start going to become more precise with it. So that's kind of what I do in the prompt engineering. Is basically it's starting with a scenario of who you're talking to, your stakeholders, what's the goal, right? Give it some context, right? And then also talk about yourself. So for Campbell University, I say, what are some 3 things that make Campbell, unique, right? One is obviously the Christian values. 2, it's basically a very teacher-student engage, high-level student-teacher engagement. We do have a program that's focused in sales. So okay, those 3 things, right? So now write a message based on that. So and so again, the prompt should start out with, who are you? Who you're talking to? What's the goal, right? And what's the context of the message? And then basically, as you see that message, right? And it's funny because they'll come up with things I'm like, wow, I would never have written it that way, right? And so, and it's and also the other thing that is the tone, right? Make sure it's a friendly tone. So give it some tone. So those are the things that I think start with the prompt. And so, and I think the tone is really important. I think we forget that, is that we have these direct messages that sound very robotic. And so you're actually be able to humanize it a little bit more. Another thing that I found, and I haven't done this research, but I've read about the research, that the more you actually showed gratitude and actually say, hey, thank you, you're awesome, thank you so much, is a fantastic response, the more you actually compliment the LLM, the better the response is. I haven't measured myself, but I've read a few articles about that as well. So I always say, you know what, doesn't hurt to be nice, right? Whether it works or not, it actually teaches you to be nice, overall as a human being. So, so those are just kind of some good tips. If anything, it creates some good behavior. Maybe they'll be nicer to you in the classroom. I don't know. So we'll see.
That's scary. No,
Yeah.
thank you so much. It sounds a lot like human design thinking. I mean, just go through the process of, ideation and prototyping something, and then testing it, and then go at it again. I like the persona, the personification, sort of with the tone and the space. Thank you for that, Mike. Yeah.
No problem.
Mike, if I wanted you to expand a little bit more on how AI could help students to prepare for their career, and if you could go more specific on some of the tools that you are seeing are being used throughout the careers or the programs that you are having.
No, that's a great question, Rosario. So, one of the things that, the counter argument that I utilize for my own faculty, it's kind of like, okay, why are we teaching these students how to cheat? We're not teaching them, we're teaching them a tool, right? And how to utilize it. And so what I'm finding is that more and more recruiters are saying, are asking my students, my students are sales, sales are going into sales careers, saying, how are you using ChatGPT to, I'll give you a scenario, right? How would you use ChatGPT to prospect, right? My students know how to answer that question. And I've actually gotten recruiters call me and say, you know what? I asked a lot. It's basically 1 out of 10 students actually get the question right. They think it's a trick question and they say, oh, I don't use ChatGPT. And it says, well, you should be. So recruiters are now asking the questions, how are you utilizing the latest technologies? And so just ChatGPT, I'm introducing technologies such as Salesforce, Einstein, also Watson X, also Jasper is another prospecting tool, and HubSpot actually has a great generative AI tool for prospecting. And again, these are we're just kind of touching the surface of some of these tools. So having them understand what prompt engineering is. And so even one of my students had told me stories like, he's like, what do you talk about in your sales class, right? And And he kind of knew, it's like, oh, this typical sales class is about role play and simulation. He's like, well, we do talk about, technology. Recruiter asked, well, give me an example. It's like, well, we talked about the difference between traditional and generative AI. They said the recruiter almost fell off his chair, right? So really, he's like, having a 21, 22-year-old understand those two differences. Now, a student goes, I really didn't know what I was talking about, but it made me sound smart, right? So, but he made it to the next step. So even having our students really understand those differences and how it create efficiencies in their sales process, instead of spending hours trying to write a message to a lead or a prospect, right? They could spend minutes on that, right? Making them more efficient. And I'm finding that more recruiters will say, hey, how can we take 10 hours of a workday and squeeze it into 4, right? Making that sales professional more efficient. And so, and again, that's just in my examples of, talking to recruiters, and the students are finding that, this is actually pretty important for me to learn, and I've got to learn it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's, if there's a moment of quiet here, I think it's important that when we talk to other faculty members, that our colleagues, that people understand that this is not an option. All right, this is part of the notion that we had to dispel, was that this was actually an option. AI is the reality out there right now. It's the reality. It's going to be the reality in education. It's the reality in the workforce. When I was running my company, this is what I tell my students. If I was still running my company today, instead of having sold it, I would not hire a junior researcher in environment or chemistry or public health that wasn't responding well in an interview about AI. I mean, I tell them, do I look like I just fell off the turnip truck yesterday? Because why would I pay for twice the amount of time, or sometimes 3 times the amount of time, for the same amount of work? I mean, it's just, we wouldn't do it. Not only that, but our field is very technical. Some of the things that they're doing technically now, you wouldn't be able to do without AI. So I wouldn't be doing a very good ethical job with my students if I didn't prepare them for that labor market reality. That's the bottom line. Yeah. I have a question for other people. How well do you think your colleagues are ready for this? Is that moving, or is that still slow, or are there some colleagues that are just kind of not clued in at all, or how's that going? I'd like to get a feel for that, if somebody doesn't mind giving me their perspective.
Yeah, I could chime in here. In my last institution, I was an administrator as a dean of a school, and I could say in my interaction with faculty, you have faculties at all level, right? I mean, you've got some that are fully embracing it. You have some that would be on, or that are on calls like this today, who are trying to figure it out, and some are just kind of burying their heads in it and waiting to be told how to respond to it. So I think it's just, at least from my experience, we see. I actually visited one school that the Department of Marketing got together and made some guidelines and control at the department level. And in terms of, they actually set some guardrails up to kind of use the term that Mike used earlier, kind of like, these are the tools, or these are the ways we want to use these tools in our courses. And they actually built that into every single course in the marketing department. So they were kind of leading that. They were kind of out there in front of that a little bit. Now it's slowly making its way across other areas or departments in the college.
Yeah, I think that's basically what we're seeing at my college, or we were, until we went through the AI task force. Was that we were just moving in applied science. We were just moving way ahead of everybody else, and that just simply doesn't work. I mean, there needs to be processes set up that the entire institution has a systematic approach to AI, or else you're going to run into a lot of troubles. For example, like financing. the AI uptake. It's hard to do when you're just one unit in the college moving forward, when there are financial implications of really modernizing the institution with AI. And I think that's, France, that's what you're going to encounter, right? I mean, those are the issues that you're going to encounter, and we're having some discussions on that already. But those are the realities, that going forward, because it's so new. It's to a lot of professors today. Yeah.
This is Ron Dufresne again, and I'm at St. Joe's University in Philadelphia, and I'm just now realizing that I think my typical colleague's reaction likely maps pretty well on the 5 stages of grief model, the Kubler-Ross model.
That's great.
And I really think that it's like, grieving what has led to my success to date as the average person's thought. So definitely started with some denial. And I'm not sure how well it maps, but I think largely people are starting into that acceptance phase of realizing something you said, Thomas. It is what it is. There is no going back. So I think we're early days on my campus of acceptance. Some people are all in, but I think that it has been about an 18-month-long grieving process.
Ron, it's interesting you say that. I've had dozens of discussions over the last few weeks with folks in higher education, faculty, staff, administrators across public, private schools, small, large, rural, urban. And there is definitely a theme that reflects that. And in some cases, almost almost anguish, and also a little bit of like poking at academia in the sense of, hey, our role should be to prepare our graduates for the real world. But if the thing we're teaching them can be done with a prompt and an AI, what's our role at this point? And education needs to be more than that. And banning the thing that makes us irrelevant is not the right solution. Now, I think that's an oversimplification, clearly, of the role of education, and education does a lot more than that. But I've heard that stated more than once over my discussions the last few weeks. Thomas, you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I think one of the things that notion of it's going to replace us is what I spent a fair bit of work on in terms of doing a paper on ethics and AI with the faculty, showing them that human-led AI is absolutely vital, and that AI, what AI does is it drives you up the empathy ladder. It gives you as faculty more time to treat students as individuals rather than as clusters. And it gives you more time to fully engage your students and improve learning outcomes. That's what I'm finding with AI. I mean, I just have way more time to basically deal with students on a one-to-one basis. I mean, way more. And they can send me their theses. I can run them through 2 or 3 LLMs, get counter opinions, and then send it back to them. They're getting way more individual treatment at a much higher intellectual level than I was able to do before. There's no question about that whatsoever. And otherwise, I wouldn't be as fully convinced as I am. Yeah.
Mike, something you said reminds me of, I think, a pretty common human approach of defining intelligence in a way that only characterizes humans.
Yes.
So, we started by defining, humans are intelligent because we can communicate, until we start to learn of other species that also communicate, to include trees with each other. And, so I think there is something, self-reinforcing that ultimately is self-defeating in remaining in that Kubler-Ross stage of denial. So, it is what it is. So, it says me, who knows nothing about it, and here I am salivating at the prospect of using AI to do my grading, and I have a lot to learn about that. But yeah, really great conversation here today.
Yeah, so we're going to explore both those topics in future webinars. I do want to have one that talks about, how do we introduce AI and when and where, right? So for a lot of faculty, they think it's kind of all or nothing. It's like, opening up Pandora's box. If I allow it, then it's everywhere and it's pervasive and it's uncontrolled. And one of the things we're doing both through the platform and through programming is trying to introduce this idea that no, just like any other tool, if you allow the usage of it, you should be able to see what that tool is doing. It's Kevin, to your point, right? Understanding the student's usage of that tool, the relationship of the tool, and to teach, right, that a collaborative relationship with this technology, which includes understanding its limitations, choosing the right tool, using it in a responsible, ethical, effective way, is all part of the educational process towards, and not an end of itself, but towards the other educational outcomes that we want to seek. I think there's a role of technology to enable that. To Thomas's point, an LLM out of the box doesn't do that, right? And so I think there are things that we need to add to it, and we plan to that enable that. And second, there's an education piece on the instructors. And one of the discussions I want to have, and I've had some fascinating ones already, is when and where do you introduce the use of AI in higher education?